I'll be presenting on plagiarism and also referencing in academic writing. So we'll start with the first part, which is in scientific writing and why referencing appropriately matters. Start with, let's try and define what plagiarism means. Plagiarism is a very so the American Association of University Professors in 1980 when plagiarism has taken over the ideas, the methods, or written words of another, and with intention that they be taken. If you take someone's work, written essays or research, acknowledging them, that is plagiarism. Also, Roy in 2009 defined plagiarism as appropriating an idea, for example, an explanation, a conclusion, a hypothesis, or without giving credit to its originator. And also from Online Etymology Dictionary, plagiarism is defined from a word that is plagiaros, which means a kidnapper, a seducer, plunderer, one who kidnaps a child or slave of another, literary theft. So you can actually it's a very big word, even the very big word, and any offender of either of these kidnappers, seducer, plunderer will face serious consequences in real life when in the hands of law enforcement agents. So also and also another author defines plagiarism as the worst epidemic attitude in scientific research. So you can all see plagiarism is not good word for us in the academia. Copying someone's work without acknowledging them, without giving them credit is actually plagiarism and somewhat an unforgivable sin in the academia. Okay, that doesn't end there. Also, Merriam-Webster's dictionary defines plagiarism in 3 to 4 ways. Number one is to steal and pass off the ideas or words of another as one's own, and also to use another's production without crediting the source. Also to commit literary theft, to present as a new idea and an original idea or product derived from an existing source. All of them without crediting them to the author is plagiarism. So what is considered plagiarism? There are two things that can be considered plagiarism, but there are some other things under them. Number one, using the work of others, and this can be either direct copying or paraphrasing, which could include word-for-word copying of someone's work without citation. Also, copying pieces of one or more sources without citation. Also, paraphrasing a small or large proportion of another's work without citation. All of them boils down to the fact that you actually use someone's work and you did not cite or credit that fact from him. That is plagiarism. Also, improper citation could be plagiarism using the work of others. Leaving out citation information or inaccurately citing a source is also plagiarism. You have to cite a source and accurately cite it appropriately using the appropriate rule of style. There is also what is called self-plagiarism or reusing your work. If you copy your work from a previous publication or assignment without indicating it was a previous work, that is self-plagiarism. And most especially if the work is published, if you have to reuse it, you have to seek the permission of the publisher in case you are not the publisher, so as to avoid self-plagiarism. Okay, what are the primary activities that promote plagiarism? Okay, in brief, the issue of copy and paste, we all know that is a very easy and fast way to, get assignments done. But in the process of that, you're copying in the first place, copying someone's work and you're pasting, and probably without citation, that makes it plagiarism. A lot of students make a mistake of waiting till the last minute before assignments are done. So, if you stay to that extent without doing your assignment, you will try to have it within a very short time. And in that short time, you will try to get the easiest way to get that assignment done. So usually to achieve that, you have to copy and paste. And you may not be able to cite all because you didn't take all the time to prepare the assignment. So that could lead to plagiarism. So I want us to go through the differences between quoting, paraphrasing, and summarizing, all of which are ways to use someone's idea with appropriate citation. So what does quoting means? Quoting means using someone else's exact words and putting them in quotation marks. Whenever you do that, you place some words in a quotation mark, we know that you are quoting somebody verbatim and you have to cite appropriately. So what is paraphrasing? In case you don't want to quote, you would like to use your own words to express the ideas of another in your own voice and while keeping the same essential message that the primary author is passing, then you also have to cite, and that is paraphrasing. Then summarizing means taking a long passage of text from someone else and condensing the main ideas into your words. If you also do that, you also must cite. So in all of these cases, you must always cite the source. Remember, in the academia, you have to cite. Okay, so what is the golden rule in cases of quotation, in cases of paraphrasing, and also in cases of summarizing? So you may quote if you need to use the exact words of the original. For instance, you can see the first highlight in yellow. According to Hoey, you see quotation opened. Cohesion may be crudely defined as the way certain words or grammatical features of a sentence can connect to its predecessors and successors in a text. Quote close. And then the year of publication and the page number is there. Okay, so in the second instance, if there is no need for you to quote verbatim, you should paraphrase. That is, report in your own words what is said from the source. In this case, you are not using double quote because you are not directly quoting. So this is a form of paraphrasing. You can see the second highlight in yellow. It says, cohesion refers to features that connect a sentence to the sentences surrounding it in a text. Then you can see there is appropriate citation, Hoey, 1991, and page 3. All right, so for the third one, if you are summarizing, you also have to make appropriate quotation. For instance, you see the third highlight in yellow. According to Hoey, there is also year of publication and page number. Then there is that summary of the initial text. So how do we avoid plagiarism? The first step is to work on your assignments on time to avoid anxiety and the temptation to copy and paste. You may still copy and paste and cite, but there is every tendency you may not be able to cite all. And if you copy and paste a lot and you use a lot of quotations, then your assignment will be seen as a book of quotations rather than an essay that was thoughtfully designed and written by you. So avoid the temptation of always copying and pasting. Then you have to also give correct credit to the author of the concept. Make it possible for your readers to find the source of that knowledge and demonstrate the legitimacy of your work. Okay, so you can learn different referencing formats such as the most commonly used ones. the APA and the Vancouver style. Okay, how to avoid plagiarism continue. Okay, whether you're using a direct quote, a paraphrase, or summary that is adding your own ideas, you must always provide an in-text citation. In-text citation is a way to guard against plagiarism. Instead of using a bibliography at the end of your essay, as the text is running, you indicate references at those points that you use someone's idea. You can see in the right part, there is a paragraph there, and there are some citations highlighted in yellow. So this is to say that the message in those sentences were actually picked from these sources. And in this way, you're not plagiarizing. You're given credit to where you picked those information from. For instance, there are some instances where citation becomes very mandatory. Like I will read the third sentence. Studies conducted in Sweden and Norway found that 15% of students reported bullying incidences at least 2 times per month. So the information here suggests that it was a careful study that was conducted to come about this number that is so precise. So for you not to quote it, questions will arise. How do you know that? From where did you get this information? So, but appropriately citing it will guard your paper from, such assumptions. And everyone that wants to verify this figure can go to Always 1993 to verify that. Okay, so again, continue how to avoid plagiarism. If you use direct quotes for definitions, you must cite, as I have said. And then there is a very important tool you can use to guard yourself against plagiarism, and that is the use of a plagiarism checker. There are quite a number of them, and in the next few slides, I will give you some examples. So it is important to mention that at PHU, the maximum plagiarism rate allowed is 30%, and not one more. If your paper has plagiarism rate of 31%, it will be rejected. All right, so what are the examples of anti-plagiarism software that you can use to guard your paper against plagiarism? Okay, we have them. You can see their logos. For instance, we have the PlagScan. We have the most common one, Turnitin. We have the Dupli Checker. We have the Crossref.me, we have the Solid CO2s, we have the Copylix, and a lot of them. Some haven't even been mentioned here. So even though you may be honest enough to write your paper yourself and then also to cite appropriate sources, it is good to double check, because at times you don't know, maybe the amount of information you're citing has constituted maybe a large proportion of your paper being highlighted as plagiarized, even though you appropriately cited. So also it is important to use these tools to clarity index. Okay, there is a software that does that. Turnitin is one of them, and in front of my screen you can see how it works. It highlights every sentence that is exactly found in another source. So you can see under this section what is anorexia nervosa. You will see the text and you will see some highlights and some colors. And then on the right hand side, you will see the match overview. And that is, for instance, for the number 1, that is highlighted red. Oh, sorry, the screenshot did not permit that section to be there. But for instance, for number 2, that was highlighted in purple, that is overwhelming desire to become a thing drives people with anorexia nervosa up to the end. You can see it has been said to be found in this section submitted to university. I can see the end, and you can see it has constituted 16% from that source. That is the text in this essay wherever is highlighted purple. It's not one place I can see here. I can see 1, 2, 3, and probably towards the end of the page and other pages. This is just a screenshot. So the right-hand side will give you like a total of what was taken from a particular source and give you the percentage of it that makes of your paper. For instance, you can see number 1 has constituted up to 28%, and that is very much. And you can see there is also another one with deep purple color, which though we cannot see in our view. It's giving you the site of where that text is taken from, blogs.myspace.com, and all sentences from this essay constitute about 15% from that source. And that is pretty much true. So as much as possible, quotations are good, and citations also, to balance them, are good. But if you want to avoid a situation whereby your paper will have high plagiarism rate, you need to practice the art of paraphrasing, that is putting it in your own words, and that will reduce your chances of your paper having a very high plagiarism rate. So this brings us to the end of this presentation on plagiarism. Thank you very much for listening. So without taking much time, we can go on to the second section, which is also brief. Academic referencing, why it matters to give credit to whom is due. So we have looked at plagiarism, and it's a very serious academic offense. So also to guard against plagiarism, we have to cite and reference appropriately. So let's take a look at some overview about academic referencing. So what is referencing in the first place? This is merely a method of indicating the source you used and providing credit to the original writers. We've stated that over and over again. But why do you think referencing matters? Okay, there are a number of reasons why referencing matters, and some of them are, number 1, primarily to avoid plagiarism. Number 2, to also give credit to the author. And then number 3, to show the original source of that information, because not everything you write in your essay is your original information. You must have consulted many sources, and so you need to indicate the original source of each information. And the fourth one is to demonstrate also your knowledge, and to show that you have also consulted widely before you write or you do your assignment. And then lastly, to lend credibility to your work. Yes, of course, if you research so much and you consulted different sources and you reference them appropriately, then your work will be seen as credible, because it has demonstrated, depth of research, and also high-level referencing to show the credibility of the information in your paper. So why referencing matters? Again, so that you do not get accused of plagiarism or taking someone's work. That is very important. If you do not cite, anybody else can wake up and say, no, that's my work. But somebody may not be the only one that has done that work, and probably you might not have used that person's work. But if you use the appropriate source of it, you have, settled everything. And also, if anybody is reading your paper, he can find the original source to get more detail on something that you're interested in. For instance, you mentioned something in your paper, and I'm interested in finding why is that so. For instance, in the previous example, we have seen that 15% of children, experience bullying in secondary school. So that is much. I want to know how they came about that 15%. And then what is the population of those boys? And then out of them, how many actually experience bullying in school? And then over what period of time? Is it just one-off or continuously? Some things you mentioned can stimulate someone else to want to research and to find out more. So if you reference bully, he can actually visit the original work and also, try to find out by himself. And also, it's a give and take. If you cite people well, you also like to be cited well. And if you also spend your time researching, producing high quality work, and somebody uses them without giving credit to you, you will not feel good. So it's always good to cite so that you will also be cited. Okay, so how do students find references? Well, there are a number of ways. So these are just examples. Okay, we have library sources. For instance, online databases like GSTOR, we have the ProQuest and others. What I'm saying, they are not limited to what is on my screen. And there are other online databases like PubMed for the biomedical research and also others. For instance, most especially in medicine and health sciences, they respect PubMed a lot. So a whole lot of references can be found here. Also, Google Scholar is another good source of references. Then also the Google search engine itself. And then the reference lists is a site. There are also institutional repositories in so many universities where you can find, scholars' research that you can read and reference. And also there are professional associations websites like the American Psychological Association that gives access to other databases that you can get references from. Okay, so let's look at guidance on choosing which references are relevant for your submissions. Not all references are actually relevant for your submissions. So number one, you have to consider scientific research objective and scope of your thesis and focus on selecting references that directly align to them. You may be writing on commodity security, maybe in a community. So you will have to find references that align to this subject. You may not be interested really in articles on agriculture, aerospace and others without direct bearing to what you're doing. So you have to know the scope of your paper, and then you search using the keywords that you're working on. Then secondly, you should prioritize recent publications. You see, there is new knowledge every day, and publications kept being, released every day. So your paper will be more credible and current to date if you are using recent references. Especially now, technology is coming, to change the face of research. So you cannot compare information that was published 10 years ago with what was published last year or this year. So whenever you're choosing your references, try to find the most current information, because the current information might have also done an extensive literature review and also studied those other publications that were published years ago to come to where they are. So you see, you're saving yourself time of coming to virtually the same conclusion as they. So why not use their information to also go to a new conclusion that will take the whole body of knowledge somewhere? So the third one is give preference to scholarly articles such as peer-reviewed journals. Yes, because they have undergone certain degree of, reviewing rigor. Also academic books and conference papers. These sources undergo rigorous review process and are typically considered more reliable and credible. Of course, anything published in journals is regarded as more credible than an ordinary national daily, which someone can just publish his opinion, and the writer of the paper may send to the outlet, and then the editor may not be versed in that. And once he sees the grammar flows and everything seems logical, he can just publish. But if you're using a peer-reviewed publications, you definitely know that the scholars in the field have looked at it and have considered it an addition to body of knowledge for them to have published it. So the fourth one is look for references from well-established researchers, reputable institutions, or respected journals in your field of study. Of course, if you're searching information, there is reputation by journals and by institutions And they come about this reputation by the quality of products that they produce. So once you identify such, try to, spend much time to get references from there as much as you can. So the fifth one, you will include references that present different viewpoints, theories, or methodologies relevant to your research topic. Before you write a paper, you're expected to go into in-depth literature review, to have a broad knowledge, and to, mix so many ideas in order to project your own idea. And the sixth one is follow citation trail. At times, you will an article in a journal or a chapter in a book, and at the end they will say suggested reading, and they will give some more other sources, or in the case of journals they will give a reference list. So you can also follow those trails because for them to be accepted for publication, there is usually reference checks, and then those are found okay. So you can also further your own research by going into the reference, checking up the references of the paper that you are interested in. And the seventh one is to pay attention to references frequently cited by other researchers in your field. Yeah, this will indicate that if a paper is frequently cited, then it means a great work or a great finding is being communicated. You can see that one paper can be cited more than 1,000 times. You know that definitely a good information is found there, and it has been found to be useful information by many people that are also writing and then citing that source. Okay, the last one is to cross-check the information and findings present in the references with other reputable sources to ensure accuracy and reliability. Nobody wants to write a paper that will be questioned or publish an information that will go and backfire, and can I say rebuttals will fly all over the pages. You would like to write something that is very credible, so you need to cross-check and ensure the accuracy of information that you're writing and that you're passing on. Okay, so briefly, we will go over referencing formats. They are not limited to these. There are very many of them. So we have three common ones. We have the Harvard style, we have the APA, the American Psychological Association, and we have the Vancouver. There are other styles not mentioned here. There is a popular one, Turabian, not listed here. So the Harvard style, both of these, Harvard style and APA, they have an author date format, whereby in an in-text citation, you can indicate the name of the author and the year of publication. And then in the reference list, the references are arranged in alphabetical order. But for the Vancouver, you use superscript of numbers, and then which will correspond to the entries in the reference list. So in any case, these are references both in text and then at the end of your paper. So this will give us an overview of citing format for Harvard. There is a reference, there is in-text citation, of course, whereby I have said you will use the name of the author and then the year of publication. Okay, for instance, check out this example. Barriers to accessing healthcare negatively impact on pregnant mothers. You see in brackets, Avanza and Ori Misan 2013. So that is an example of in-text citation. Also, there is this other one, result from the analysis of Yates 2012 in Uganda and Johari Fad 2012 in Rwanda showed that being of high socioeconomic status, and the sentence ends. So you have in-text citations in about two formats. You can have them at the end of the sentence, just as in the case of the first one. And then also a sentence can start with a citation, just as in the case of the second one. You are calling the author first, and then maybe the year of publication, then mentioning what he says. Both are allowed. Okay, so we frequently come across et al., which is a Latin term that means et alia, that means in English, and others. So we use this term to mean uh, to cite publications that have four or more authors only. So for publications that have one, two, and three authors, you all include their name in citations. But in the reference list, you're going to list all of them. But if the authors are up to four or more, you just use the name of the lead author and then use et al., then the year of publication. Okay, so you can see this as an example. A result from the analysis of Topa et al. 2011 in comparison of different experiments. Okay, this is just one example, but in the reference list, all the other authors have been mentioned to show that it's not only Topa et al. That is in the publication. So the referencing formats for different sources differ slightly, even for Harvard. For instance, the referencing format for journal differs from books, differs from websites, differs from dissertations, differs from blog posts, differs from videos, and differs from many other sources that you're thinking of. So, but one thing you need to understand and to keep in mind is this particular format. For instance, if you are using Harvard and it's a journal, so you have to be used to this format. For instance, name of the author, the year of publication has to be in brackets, the title of the study, the journal name, followed by the volume of the journal, issue of the journal, and then the page number. So by the right-hand side is just an example. All these authors, 1998, maternal mortality in Maiduguri, Nigeria, that is the title, and then the journal is Journal of Obstetrics and Gynecology, volume 18, issue number 2, and pages 139 to 140. So this is format for journal. We have this for a book. What differs is from the title. If it's a book, we'll use the town of publication, then a colon, and then the publisher's name. So for an online resource also, you'll use the author, the year of publication, the name of the article, then you find the URL, and then the dates that you access that URL. All right, so that's a brief overview about Harvard. We have APA, American Psychological Association. It has similar in-text citation as the Harvard, because this is a similar example. What's maybe different perhaps is the reference list, the reference writing. Okay, for instance, we have here the formats for a journal by the left-hand side, and then the example. Okay, pretty well the referencing for journal is somehow alike, but it could differ from other sources, for instance. So this is format for a book, and this is format for internet. Okay, so that's it for APA. So this is Vancouver. I have said earlier, it uses superscript numbers to indicate that that information was taken from somewhere. And if you want to find out, you go to the reference list and look at the reference entry that corresponds to that number. I think that makes sense as well. For instance, it's increasing contraceptive demand, access, and uptake are key interventions to improve maternal health outcomes. So if you want to know the source of this, you will go to the reference list and check the fourth entry, and you will see where this information was taken from. Okay, so this is just an example, actually. So for an auto-cited in-text, this is how the format for reference list for Vancouver style is made. They have some minor differences that you need to watch out for. The format is very important because it is advised in every paper you stick to one rule of style. If you're choosing Harvard, you do have it all through in-text and do have it in the reference list. If you're using APA, you become consistent and uniform with it. So also Vancouver, so also Turabian, and other rules of style. So it is not professional for you to mix two styles in the same paper. I will advise you stick to one rule of style. Okay, this is a style format for referencing using Vancouver. There is a specific format, author with no commas here. Unlike others that we've seen, there is comma, title of study, the journal name, the year, the volume, the serial number, then a colon, and then page numbers as well. They have some few differences. For instance, no comma here after the author's last name, and also before the page number. In Harvard, we used to see PP, meaning pages, that is indicating page range, but we are not seeing such here. So they have some minor differences that if you're selecting one, you need to be consistent with it. Okay, this is all style for Vancouver. And this brings us to the end. So as a closing remarks, plagiarism is a very serious offense in academic writing. Whatever information you use writing your paper, you need to appropriately give credit to it. And you need to do that using appropriate referencing. So you reference using a particular rule of style, and you should be consistent with it and with its formats. And note that you can reference in text, and also at the end of the day compile a list of your references. And now that there are software for references, it even makes it much easier to manage all your references without having to do them manually. So thank you all for listening.
Hi, this is Dr. Peterson. I'd add one more thing, and that is if you're reading a reference that has looked at a number of studies, and it references many times to a particular study, when it is possible, it's good for you to identify that reference and go back and look at the original one and then cite it as well, especially if it's sort of a classic paper, so that you're not, when you can avoid it, don't just cite the overarching, the one that you've read first, but go to the underlying source of the information, if it's, especially if it's critical for the work that you're trying to document.
I think we now need to proceed with Felix's presentations. He will just present on 2 other topics, and that should be it.
All right.
Then we'll have some more questions.
Right, on to you then, Felix.
Thank you. So before I go to literature search, we would just look at quickly Mendeley, and also what Google Scholar can tell us. So first, I'll share my screen and show you the link. So this is the link for downloading Mendeley. So I mean, this is it. Glad this session is recorded. So take a look at it. This is where you can download it for Windows. If you have Mac, you click here. If you have Linux as an operating system, you click here. But I know most persons use Windows, so you just click here and you will download Mendeley for desktop. Mendeley for desktop. You know, I'm emphasizing that because we have the Mendeley Reference Manager that you use on the web. So it is the one for the desktop. So once you download it, you can install it, follow the prompt. But I would advise that before you download, you can create an account, because when you download it and you open it, it will ask you for a username and a password to be able to open the Mendeley desktop. So it gives you a desktop sign on your laptop after installation, and you're going to have something like this. So when you install it successfully, you have something like this. So in the website, they have, you know, instructional manual on how to use it, very detailed ones. But I'm going to show us like a quick a quick rundown. So here, that's the file that you can use to add. Probably you have downloaded the article on, from the internet in the PDF. You can actually come to file and add. Once you click add, it will take you to wherever you have, put that article, and you can bring it here. And once you select that article and say, okay, they would be listed like this. Additionally, you can actually create a folder on your desktop or your document, and you put the individual articles inside. You can still add a folder instead of adding a file. So the addition of those files creates this sort of experience where you have the articles, as you can see here. So I have some, but yours would probably come empty. So the more you add using these add features, the more you will have all this stuff listed. So if you want to check the article, you can just click on it. It's going to show you the type of article, whether it's a journal article or it's a book or it's a report or it's a book section, whatever it's going to tell you. And it's going to show you the title of the article, the authors, the journal, the year, the volume, the issue, and the page number, just like, Kabiru had just mentioned. So how do you, automate this process? Having, listed the articles that you would probably use for your work. So you're going to be doing your writing in a Microsoft Word, something like this, all right? But when you're installing this, it will ask you to install an add-on, which is a Word add-on. So how you would know if you have the Word add-on, because if you open your Microsoft Word and you go to this references section, you're supposed to see this symbol, insert citation, and you're supposed to see this symbol, open Mendeley. If you're not seeing this symbol, insert citation, and you're not seeing this symbol, open Mendeley, it just tells you you have not successfully installed the Word or the Microsoft Word add-on. So it's easy to do that. So in your Mendeley desktop, just go to Tools and check, and you're going to see, install MS Word plugin. It's as simple as that. So my own, you're seeing uninstall MS Word plugin because I have it already installed. So it's asking me to install it. So for yours, you would see install MS. So you just click on it and it's going to install it. It takes a few seconds to do. Although when you're installing the Mendeley desktop, it will prompt you to install the Microsoft Word plugin at the same time. But just in case, you can still come to Tools and install it afterwards. So how do you reference automatically? So for example, this is your introduction for what you want to write. Okay, so we have maybe the bold for this introduction. So maybe you want to write on malaria, for example. Most of the examples, it may not be the way it is, when you get the article. So I'm just demonstrating what needs to be done. So if maybe you're working on malaria and you want to introduce, maybe malaria, is a very fatal disease that has taken the life of millions of under 5 children in developing country. See? So now this statement is from my head. Now I'm not sure if the 5 million or under the millions of under 5 children is correct. So you have to do a literature search, which is the next slide that we're going to take, and find an article that is going to back up these evidence. Because I just typed this, I have to be sure it is millions, or it is thousands, or it is even hundreds. So by the time I do my literature search and I find out that, oh, it's probably not millions, maybe it's only 100,000, because I have evidence to show for it, I'm going to change this to 1,000 or so, whatever it is. But I have made my first statement and I need an evidence to back up this statement. So how do I automate the referencing process? So for Vancouver, you put the references after the full stop, all right? And you have to confirm the style. So the style here is Vancouver. In Public Head U, there are two recommended reference style, APA or Vancouver, all right? So here, the style selected is Vancouver. I can choose another style, APA, all right? I'll show us APA later. So for Vancouver, which is usually superscript, the references is usually after the full stop. For APA, it's usually before the full stop. So that's the slight differences. So if you, since you want the reference outside the full stop, you just put your cursor there, all right? And the next thing you do, you go to Insert Citation, go to Mendeley, and you probably have the study or the paper that you want to cite. So you just pick it, okay? Just pick the paper, all right? Whichever one you think it is, you just pick it. Once you have picked that paper, you just go to Cite. That's it. You just click Cite, and it comes here as number 1, because that's what Vancouver does. It arranges your references in numbering order from 1 down. All right, so this is number 1. So let's assume I want to add another reference to this number 1. I can do that. I can still leave the cursor there. I mean, adding another reference before my next statement. I can just leave the cursor there and do the same. I go to Insert Citation, go to Mendeley, choose the next article that relates to that, and you go to Cite. It gives you number 2. But you would notice that this looks like 12 because something is missing, which is the comma to separate both. So there is a feature called merge after you've added more than one reference. So what do? You just highlight both and just notice what is happening here. Here it is shown as Insert Citation, but by the time I highlight these two, it changes from Insert Citation to Merge Citation. So you can now click on it and it's going to put a comma. So the comma is not done manually. I see people try to do that manually. You will just mess up your whole references, all right? The Mendeley has a feature that you can that helps you merge. So if I had like 1, 2, 3, 4 articles that are backing this statement I've made, and I do the merge citation, it will just do 1 to 4, and the comma will not be there. So this is the first statement. So what if I want to make another statement and say the government of these nations have put in lots of funds through international organizations to checkmate the spread of malaria in their country. So I've made another strong statement and I need evidence for this. So I have to go to the internet and do a literature search to get literatures that will back this statement. If it's not available, then I'll take it out. Sometimes too, the statement you put can be inspired by the different literatures you have read on malaria before you even started writing. So I have this statement and I want to reference it. I do the same. My cursor is there. I go to Insert Citation. I go to Mendeley, I can go down and look for the particular paper, I find it, I do cite, and it's there. Oh, sorry, my cursor was in the wrong place. Sorry about that. My cursor is supposed to be here. My cursor is supposed to be here. So insert citation, I go to this point, I select it, and I cite. So it's going to be number 3. So 2 final things before we move to the next session. Now you have referenced the first statement 1 and 2, the second statement number 3. How do you create your reference list? This is also done automatically. All right. So you can go to the next page, but since I have space here, let me just do it here. You have to type these yourself, references. All right. And you can highlight it, bold. Then you put your cursor under that references so that it can list the 3 references you have already put in your in-text. So you just come here, as simple, just click Insert Bibliography. That's it. Once you click Insert Bibliography, it has listed the references for you. And interestingly, if you put another reference here, it's going to automatically put the 4 there. So you don't have to do insert, you only do insert bibliography once. Once you've done like 2 or 3, so that you can be monitoring and ensuring that it is referencing it properly. So watch this. I want to put a 4th reference here. You see it's going to put 4 reference automatically. I go to insert citation, go to Mendeley, choose the 4th reference, and cite. As it's putting 4 here, it is putting 4 here automatically, and that's why it keeps, updating your references. So since this is 3 and 4, I have to merge, so I highlight both and I merge, and that's it. So this is how Mendeley is used. It's as easy and it's as simple as that. All right, so that is it. So what if you don't want to use Mendeley, you want to do the shortcut, which is using Google Scholar, because actually manually doing your referencing, this may be the reason why we see so many errors in students' reference list, because doing these things manually, you would probably forget a comma, forget a full stop, forget a colon, forget the ye, so if you're not going to be using Mendeley reference list, so this is another way you can do it, okay, by using Google Scholar. All right, you can use Google Scholar. You can use Google Scholar. All right, so it's free for you. So this is Google Scholar. So let's assume that this first statement you have made, you want to use this first reference, which is the reference number 1. Okay, and you're not using Mendeley, you are using Google Scholar. You can actually copy the title of that article. You copy the title of that article. You go to Google Scholar. You paste the title of that article. Then you search. Once you search, it's going to bring out that article for you. You just go to Cite, and it will list the different referencing formats. Just pick the one you want. If it's Vancouver you want, you've already typed your number 1, so you're going to put it there. The next one will be number 2. If it's upper you need, which is arranged alphabetically, just copy it. Just copy it, all right, and go to your Word, document, and paste, create, do the same thing, the references, all right, and just go down and paste it there. Then if you have earlier alphabet like A, you paste it up, so what Google Scholar does for you, it saves you writing the references manually and making mistakes, but there's a manual effort here if you're using Google Scholar, because you will be the one arranging the references in alphabetical order. But if you're using Mendeley, it does that for you, okay? So this example I have demonstrated is for Vancouver. What if You want to do APA. Do you need to do this all over again? No, you don't need to. All you need to do, just go to the style and tell Mendeley, please, I don't want Vancouver anymore. I think I want APA. You just choose your APA, and that's it. And it will automatically transform everything from Vancouver to APA without having to do any manual work. Arrange the references alphabetically for you. So it's really a bomb to know how to use a referencing management software. It saves you a whole lot of time. So that is it for this session. So I'm going to go now to the how to search for literatures. I hope you find that useful. The session is recorded, so you can use the recording and practice on your own and come back to us if you have some. Dr. Peterson, can I progress?
Please do. And I will just reaffirm what Felix just said. Having done references by hand, using this software is transformative. So you can concentrate on the content of what you're trying to show and back it up with the references without spending untold hours, doing it all by hand. So by all means, keep that recording and the presentation for your ability to use it when you're starting to do your own references.
Thank you, Dr. Peterson. So we would look at searching for articles. We thought we should have this particular session with you, inclusive of what Dr. Kabiru has shared, because we felt, sometimes students, will say, oh, I am unable to find, what I need for, my work. So what do? I am not able to find studies, that will back up the, evidence of what I'm trying to communicate to the audience. So this is why we have this, so you would be able to navigate your way around these sort of things. So search strategy, get the articles you need, is as simple as that. So search strategy, it's a strategy, that you use to get articles. But an interesting thing about it is you have to pay attention to keywords in either your study aim or study objectives as you impute them in the database, okay? And those keywords have some algorithms at the back end that helps the database understands what you are truly looking for. And sometimes these keywords can come individually. Sometimes you will have to combine them. And there are terms that are designated for them. They are called Boolean operators, and we would get to know, more about them as we progress. So why do we need, a literature review? Why do you do assignments and, they want you to look at what other people have done? Because you have to gain understanding of your subject matter. You are doing a study on preeclampsia. You need to know what other people have done in relation to preeclampsia, not only in your region, but also in other African countries and also in the international community. Because talking about preeclampsia in the local context, may not be representative of what is happening globally. So you need to see what is happening globally. that gives you a holistic idea and also puts the subject in context so that you'll be able to communicate properly your research idea to the world so that everybody will be able to appreciate what you're doing, irrespective of their geographical, representation or context. Another reason is duplication of research work. You want to do a study, related to dengue fever, and in your local region, you're interested in that kind of study. When you're doing, searching for articles to use to back up your evidence, you now realize that someone in your same university has done the same work that was published like 1 year ago or 2 years ago. So you have to have a strong justification for doing the same work, in that shortest amount of time. So this is what, getting articles and reading articles of what others have done saves you from, because when you're publishing or trying to publish a work that was done in the same locality, in the same region, probably in the same university, less than 2 years, you need a strong justification why you should repeat that work and why the findings should be different. So most times it is usually allowable, like at least something above 3 years, 5 years, because it takes about 5 years for an idea or a concept or a philosophy to truly change. Although in the health sector, in the public health sector, in the epidemiology sector, it could be shorter. See what is happening in COVID, dengue, and fever, and all those sort of things. And the third one is to relate your findings to previous study so that you can identify possible research areas. Someone had published something like this, somewhere. You can read that work and say, okay, this is what you did in your region. I think I can use this perspective in my own region. Also to identify gaps. For example, in one of my masters, I did something on noise-induced hearing loss amongst musicians. Part of what inspired it also was the gaps that I found. I noticed that in my region, even in my country, over 90% of the work that has been done was noise in churches, meaning they are testing the sound pressure level inside the church auditorium, checking the acoustics and the rest. But the aspect of where you would have to assess the hearing of the musicians, none. So I saw a gap, and that motivated me to actually delve into that work. So you see, I wouldn't have known if I didn't look at what other people have done in that area. So I saw a gap, and I delved into it and took advantage of it. Formulate research questions, because you can see what others have done, the kind of objectives they looked at. You can also inspire your own objective. Now, PICO, inspires how you search. And every research title you have, there is a PICO component in it. Once you're able to identify the PICO component in your research title, it facilitates your search process. So that's why I need to mention that I had to mention this. And I know a lot of you are not new to this PICO concept because it's one of the courses, the evidence-based practice course. We really delved a lot in this. So the P is the population of the problem, the I is the intervention, exposure of treatment, the C is the comparison, if any, then the O is the outcome, meaning the main reason why you're doing that study. So every research title has this PICO component. The C may not be there all the time, but the P, the I, and the O will most likely be there. So you just have to identify it. So this is an example. So I have this aim of study, which is to determine noise exposure levels and its health consequences among gospel instrumentalists in Pentecostal churches in Port Harcourt City. All right, this is something I did. So if you look at this aim, you could identify the P, the population, which is the musicians or the instrumentalists. You can identify what they are exposed to. For some study, it may be an intervention, but for my own study, it was an exposure, which is the loud noise or sound. For comparison, I didn't have a comparison group, so it was not applicable. What was my main outcome? Why was I doing this study? To be able to assess the prevalence of noise-induced hearing loss, those that have lost their hearing due to excessive exposure to loud sound. So my PICO is clear, from the start. And that clarity of that PICO is what will enhance my search. So we'll come to that later. But for now, where can you find quality literatures, for free? So we've taken our time to list the general ones. You can visit them later. The first on the list is PubMed. Especially those of us doing public health, you should be familiar to PubMed. It's like our mantra, search database. So it's there on the top list. You can explore other ones. For institutional repositories, that's universities and the rest of them, these are some of the databases you can visit and explore for and literatures. So great literature, I know sometimes we focus a lot about the literatures that are published in peer-reviewed journals, but there are some that are not published in peer-reviewed journals like PLOS ONE, Biomed Central, Lancet, and the rest of them, but they contribute to knowledge. I mean, good knowledge, so they are ranged in different formats. Sometimes they can come in reports, sometimes they can come in students' theses, dissertations, conference proceedings, government publications, technical reports, working papers, unpublished. I know you have seen most of these documents, and during writings too, like me in my write-ups. For example, key definitions, you would go to an authority like World Health Organization, to get, and the definition, is, you didn't get it from a published, work in PLOS ONE. It was in WHO's website, or in their report. So that's an example of a great literature. So because it's not peer reviewed, does that make it less, of a quality content? No. So which is why I felt it's an area as students we can take advantage of too. For example, you have an area of interest which is malaria. You can look at, like, we have the Malaria Consortium. You can look at some of their reports on malaria. They can have very rich content, in that aspect. So great literatures are very, very, important, and I think they would really help spice up your work. And sometimes you can identify organizations that do the kind of work that you are interested in. Search their website and learn more from what they are doing, and that could inspire you, give you even better idea in developing your final assignment or whatever writing you are doing, because now you have a very good idea on what the whole concept is all about, because you have seen a practical demonstration on organizations that are using it on a daily basis. So this way I had put some examples of those kind of reports for USAID, for Chemonics, and also for the Guttmacher Institute that does a lot of publications on obstetrics and gynecology. I've read so much of their reports, very, very rich contents. So how do I search? We're going to practicalize this, but in the meantime, there are some operators they call Boolean. You have the and, you have the or, you have the north, and you also have the asterisk, So they may not mean much, you know, when you put them, because they may not look like regular sentence that you are used to, but the database understands, you know, what you're looking for. They understand that language and they will give you, you know, what you want. So let's do some practice in Google. Thank you very much. Should I progress with the practical, or you think, do you have a question before we progress to the short?
Yeah, just a quick comment, because I think in the public health, even more so than in sort of clinical realms, the gray literature becomes very important. Many of you will be not just doing research and looking for academic publications. You want to do your literature review on a particular subject to figure out what to do in your community, in your health system. And the gray literature is a little different than the peer review. Sometimes it's not as well controlled or as rigorous, but what it does do much more often is it talks about the how to do something, not just the sampling the audience, but the kinds of things that went well, the things that went wrong. So as you're thinking about your context and whether a program done in Honduras or in South Africa is comparable to what you're thinking about, you can go into the project reports and see how did they choose it, who did they bring on as partners in order to be able to implement. Were they working with the government? Were they working with the faith-based sector? So the gray literature is really helpful in the how-tos. The peer review literature has more rigor and insurance that all of the different factors have been controlled for. So in public health, I'd say you want a combination, and the search that Felix has talked about, this is where you find out what everybody else knows, and as he pointed out, then look at the gaps, either geographically or within that realm, that you can begin to address and fill, you know, the unanswered questions. I will say we can't forget that it is sometimes really important to duplicate other research, because that's what builds the body of knowledge. One study is one study. 2 studies, 10 studies, 20 studies that all come up with the same answer is a very solid finding. The difficulty right now is if you're seeking publication, it can be harder to get published a duplicate study. And therefore you will more often find those studies that say, hey, look, we found exactly the same thing in our country as someone else found it in another country. Those are more likely these days to get published in something like the PLOS because of the new finding bias in publication. So I just wanted to add that. And Felix, yeah, go ahead for the next one.
Thank you, Dr. Peterson, for those insightful comments. Thank you very much. So we would just take a short demonstration on what I have been saying regarding your search. So what I would use Google for this, but you can try it in other databases. They speak the same language. The first language is the star. The star, Google understands it as everything that has to do with that word or with that phrase. So for example, if you're doing something on malaria, and you type in your Google malaria and you put a star at the end of that word, what you're telling Google is, give me everything that you have in your database on malaria, and that's all Google is going to give you. So if I do a search, you'll see that everything that is going to come out will be malaria. You won't see anything else. It's only malaria. Malaria, malaria, if you go down, malaria. You know, so it just gives you malaria from different places. okay? Because that is what it means. So if I now want to bring it down, you know, in terms of, you know, bringing it down to my context, you know, because if you just type malaria and star and it gives you, you will find out that most of what it's going to give you would be different things from different regions, from different countries, you know. So you may say, oh, okay, now since I want to focus my study on a particular region, Nigeria, I can say, okay, I can use the Boolean and. So meaning if I add the capital and I add Nigeria, it's going to focus the findings of malaria in the context of Nigeria. So that is where the and comes in. So if I do a search of this, you will see malaria in Nigeria. You see? So it's now focusing malaria in the context of Nigeria. That's what you are going to be seeing. Most of the things it's going to give you is related to Nigeria. But what if I want Nigeria or Ghana or Nigeria or a country, you know, in the developing region, maybe Sweden. So I can use or instead of and for the two countries, so that I need information. Let's say now you are doing a study, maybe you have some research team in Nigeria and some research team in Sweden, and you want to get information for those two countries, and you don't want to do malaria and Nigeria, then you do malaria and Sweden. You can use the or so that it can bring information for Nigeria when it sees it, or information for Sweden when it sees it. So this is what you do. Malaria, and if you're going to use the or, you're going to put it in a bracket sign. So there has to be a bracket sign here, a space, then or Sweden, bracket close. So if you search, so what it's going to do, at one time, it's going to give you information for Nigeria. If it sees information for Sweden, it's going to bring it out for you. So that is what this does. So if you go down where we're seeing Nigeria, so most of the information is in Nigeria. So it helps you to also think twice. I'm doing malaria and Nigeria or Sweden, but most of the information is still Nigeria. So what does that tell you? Maybe the subject does not relate to C. So that also gives you a clue. You know, maybe you are choosing the wrong location or the wrong place. Maybe the malaria does not apply to this region. That's why it's still giving you information for Nigeria. So what if we now take this out and we now maybe take it back, you know, to another similar country, let's say Ghana, and see what happens. So let's go down. You see, we have Nigeria, we have Dawaki. So this Nigeria, so we have Das Gupta. Okay, so we have Nigeria. So it seems we have more, you know, studies ongoing in this region. Okay, so let's try and Ghana and see what comes out. So let's see the number of literatures. Okay, so we have malaria in Ghana now. So we have Ghana, so we have using Ghana malaria indicator. All right, okay. So let's try something else. So what if we say, maybe looking at two diseases at the same time. I just want to demonstrate the or. So what if we put the bracket? I want to look at malaria or TB and malaria, maybe choose another country, maybe Senegal. So this command line now, I want to look at malaria or TB in Senegal. So I want to demonstrate the or. So it's supposed to give me information on malaria in Senegal where it finds it, or TB in Senegal where it finds it at random. That's why I'm using the or. Either one should go. So I'm going to say enter now. So here we have malaria in Senegal. Malaria in Senegal. Here we have malaria in Senegal. Okay, malaria. Okay, good. Here we have TB. Here we have TB. Good. Here we have TB. Okay. So we have malaria. We have malaria. We have malaria. So we seem to have more publications, you know, for malaria. But you have seen why I did that. So it can give you information for both, you know, if you want to do it that way. Otherwise, you can actually do it one, you know, after the other to get the most of it. Now, if we're going to use, for example, the PICO that I have demonstrated in my work, and I want to get information about noise-induced hearing loss amongst musicians or instrumentalists, okay? So I can go with the outcome first. You know, you can type the noise, induced hearing loss and musicians, noise-induced hearing loss among musicians. So you want it to give you anything it can find on noise-induced hearing loss among musicians, but where? So, and where? So these are the three commands, because it will give you, if whatever article it's bringing out right now is going to have noise-induced hearing loss among musicians and in Nigeria. So we're going to do a search now. So my article is coming out first. So this is the article I published. So it's coming out first, very good. So this is talking about health effect of noise exposure levels amongst musicians. So this is it. This was published in Nigeria. This one, Igoroje, is also published in Nigeria. This is a Guardian newspaper. So this is a hazard of noise, hearing loss will be among musicians too. So you see, it's going to give you articles, you know, related to noise-induced, you know, hearing loss. But another thing it does, sometimes if you do noise-induced hearing loss, you know, musicians and Nigeria, the article it may give you may be an abstract. It may not be a full article, or it may not be the article that you have access to. So it will give you interchangeably, you know, things you have access to and things you don't have access to. So if you wanted to bring out, let's say, the first 100 articles, and you want to be able to have full access to that first 100 articles, then you have to add and PDF. Once you add and PDF at the end, whatever it generates will be full article, because it's going to bring out the PDF of that article. So if we say enter, you would see that anything it gives you will have a PDF, and because it has a PDF, it will most likely be full article. So here we'll have the PDF. It's a Sage publication, but it's a PDF. So if we open it, it will most likely have the full article. Let's confirm if this does. This one has access. Let's check. National Institute. Okay. This one is a WHO article. It has a full article. This one has a PDF too. Bowline. This one has PDF too. It's already open. I think this one's accessible. This one is accessible. It has a PDF. Here's the PDF. So it's accessible. We can have the full article. That's the PDF. So this one too showed us that it has a PDF. This one too showed us that it also has full article and it can be accessed and download the PDF here, but the full article is also here. So another thing I would like to show us is, because sometimes when you do this sort of search, you may find articles that are very old, not all, like this is 2019, yes, this is 2023, but sometimes it can give you, this is 2005, that's really old. This is 2006, that's really old. So you can actually do a range of the years that you need for that article. All right, so how do you do that? You can come here, tools. So when you click tools, you come here, anytime. Once you click anytime, custom range. So you click the custom range, then you can select from when to when. So because we are interested in articles that are not older than 10 years, so you can do, if we do 2015, that should be okay, 15, 16, 17. Okay, so 2015 to 2023 should be within that bracket of 10 years or less. So you can actually do a customized data range so that whatever article it is bringing for this search strategy would be within this range. So you just click go, and you see this is 2019, 2020, 2023. If we go down, you would see 2020, 2020, 2019. If we go down, this is 2018, 2020. So you see any article, it gives you 2022, 2019, 2018. So it's not going to give you all those 2005, 2003, and all that, because you have customized. And this custom stays, so whatever you are searching will maintain this custom. So that saves you time, so that you don't keep moving forward and be checking for the most recent document. So I would be hopeful. So just use that Boolean and it's going to give you what you want. Even if you don't want to use this full, as long as it's a standardized acronym, which is noise-induced hearing loss, if you use that, I think it should be able to give you something too, you see? Because a lot of studies use those acronyms in it. So it's still going to give us things related to noise-induced hearing loss, which is an occupational noise, because people that have that work in an environment that is very noisy. So even if I don't want studies from Nigeria and I don't want studies in a location, because when you're writing, you may not be interested in a location. So you can just choose the noise-induced hearing loss and the musicians, maybe, and the PDF, just to get the full articles, and that is it. This time is not going to restrict you to Nigeria per se. You see, my article is not coming out first anymore because now I have, so now you are seeing articles from different countries. Mine is third, now. So you will see articles from different regions, not limited to a particular place. Thank you.
I'll have just a couple thoughts. I think the example Felix gave right at the end has embedded an important point. Sometimes when you're looking for your references in a particular place, on a particular subject, sometimes the topic becomes so narrow that there isn't very much there, or there are very few and they're small studies. You can do things like recognize that noise-induced hearing loss in musicians, there are comparable audiences, and you then open your search criteria back up and say noise-induced hearing loss in occupations. And so that can get you comparable things that allow you to say, oh, construction workers have this amount of hearing loss. We could posit that musicians will also have it. And it sets the stage and gives you the background on the causal pathway of the problem, the interventions that have worked for that kind of problem in your more specific group where you may not have a lot of references. The other is when you take the most recent articles, that's, obviously you want to be as much up to date as you can. Again, sometimes there is both really important sort of seminal work that was done before your time frame. You're probably still okay as long as when you look at your more recent publications, you look at their references, and if you see the same reference in different articles, then you know that there was something published in 2008 and your criteria started at 2015. But this one is so important for the understanding of your issue. You may want to, for that individual article, go back to that one piece and grab it. But in that case, you usually will see it cited multiple times in different articles. And it's the way to not open it up so you're looking at the last 40 years, but look at a short time frame, but still pick up those really critical older articles. All right, well, thank you all for being with us today. I hope that the presentations are going to help you in your final assignments, and both on the search and then on the details of how to do it, and especially those both logistical and detailed but really critical things on how do you cite, how do you not avoid the plagiarism, any of those things that would compromise the good work that I know you will all do. I look forward to seeing what you're all working on and the kinds of problems you're going to look at investigating, and may it go really well.